Even if it's just you and you're a solo shooter with a DSLR, that doesn't mean the quality has to be garbage. You see a lot of videos online from all sorts of people, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, and they all have different crew sizes. And I think it's a very easy trap to fall into, to blame it on the gear, which I've talked about in other videos, but also to blame it on the crew size. I didn't have enough people to get the shot I needed to get or to make it look the way I wanted it to look, and that's why it looks bad. Now, I think that's kind of an excuse. You might not be able to get a specific shot that you want because maybe you just didn't have enough people to get that type of shot, but that doesn't mean the shot that you got has to look bad. You can still do whatever it is you need to do with one person. You just have to keep that in mind. You have restrictions, you have restraints that are making you work within a box that's not as big because you don't have 4 people like you normally do. You only have 1. I've talked about this with the gear where, maybe you don't have the dynamic range with one camera that you have with another. Maybe you're working with something that's only got 10 stops of dynamic range. It's an older camera, let's say. You could blame that on your shot, how bad it looks on the camera, or you could have done a different shot to make sure that your highlights weren't blown out or that your shadows weren't super noisy. You always have to take in consideration the restraints of the production itself. And sometimes that's gear. Oftentimes it's gear. You don't have the lights you need or the audio equipment you need or the cameras you need. You can always rent things, but budget is always a concern. So oftentimes that falls on the gear and you have to shoot with something that you don't really want to, but you still have to make it work. Everyone has to do this. So if you have ugly shots or your audio sounds terrible or your lighting's bad, you can't blame that on the gear. Yes, in some situations, sometimes there is stuff that it's never going to be perfect because of the gear, but that doesn't mean it has to be ugly. And that's really the distinction I'm drawing. It's not, could it have been better? Absolutely, if you had the right gear. But how often do you see videos online from other people where they just look bad and they could easily blame the gear? They could blame the crew size. I didn't have enough people. That really can't be your excuse. You have to keep those restraints in mind and only do stuff that can be done by one person. And that means it's not going to be the perfect production, as good as it could be, but the budget's restricted. And hopefully the client knows that, and hopefully the producer knows that, or whoever it might be. And so you work with what you got. There are plenty of short films that are done with small crew sizes where maybe the director is also opping the camera. That could be a situation. And maybe the acting is bad. Could you blame that on the fact that the director was running the camera? You could, but it would be good to think of that beforehand and take action to make sure that that doesn't happen. What can you be doing to make sure that the project is as good as it can be with the restraints that you have? It's a really good mindset to always be in of like, what can you do? How can you maximize you as one person, right? What's the best equipment setup? What's the best location? What's the best size of the cast or the scope of the production? All of these things kind of balance each other out. And if you're trying to do something crazy and you only have one person to do it, that's just a recipe for disaster. You're gonna fail. Because the math doesn't work. So scale back the crazy thing that you're trying to do, knowing that you only have one person to do it or 2 people to do it, and achieve that instead and do that the best you can and make that awesome. Because when someone's watching a video, you can't make excuses while they're watching it, right? You can't sit there and put disclaimers on the video, say, oh, I didn't have a big enough crew size. That's why this shot is out of focus. It doesn't work that way. The shot's out of focus. It looks bad. So if you know that the focus is going to be messed up for a particular shot because you didn't have enough people, well, don't do that shot. Do a different shot. Use those formulas and those rules because you cannot make excuses. They don't fly. They don't fly. They don't fly for the client. They don't fly for the producer. They don't fly for the audience or the viewer. So do what you can do with the crew size that you have and embrace it. Sometimes you get to work crew sizes 10, 20, 100, who knows? But other times you have to work with 1 or 2. And that's okay. You can still make it work and just never use it as an excuse. Do the best you can do with what you have, and it should still look awesome. And no one should be able to know. People should look at it and go, oh, great, awesome. That was a great video. That was a great short film. And you shouldn't have to tell them that you only did it with 2 people. If you do, that's great. That's kind of the champion stories you hear about people. Oh, we shot this for $5,000. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, you shot it with 2 people. Great, awesome, looks good. Do it with 4 next time and make it even better.